I thought I was the golden child until Thanksgiving dinner, 2018, when my sister-in-law Laura opened her mouth and shattered every illusion I had about family love. 3 years of helping my parents through their financial crisis, covering mortgage payments, grocery bills, even my brother Derek's mounting credit card debt. I believed family meant unconditional support. That night, sitting around our childhood dining table, I learned the brutal truth about conditional love and discovered who I really was, beneath all those check stubs and bank transfers. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you have ever felt taken advantage of by family, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Trust me, you will want to hear how this Thanksgiving dinner changed everything about my relationship with money and family forever. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly they played me. My name is Madison, and at 28, I thought I had life figured out. As a software engineer pulling in six figures, I was the success story of our family. When my parents Robert and Patricia started struggling after the 2016 recession, hit Dad's construction business hard, stepping in felt natural. What started as helping with small amounts here and there quickly became something much bigger. Dad's construction company had been thriving for decades, but when the housing market crashed in our area, work dried up faster than a puddle in August. Mom worked part-time at a local flower shop, but her income barely covered groceries for two people, let alone a mortgage on the four-bedroom house where Derek and I grew up. The first time they asked for help, it was just $200 for the electric bill. Dad's voice cracked over the phone when he called me that Tuesday evening. "Madison, I hate to ask this, but we are a little short this month," he said, and I could hear the shame in his words. Growing up, Dad had been the provider, the strong one who fixed everything and never needed help from anyone. Hearing him struggle to ask for $200 broke something inside me. Of course I said yes. How could I not? These were the people who had raised me, supported my dreams, paid for my college education, even when money was tight. $200 was nothing compared to what they had invested in me over the years. I transferred the money that night and felt good about it. Really good. Like I was finally able to give back to the people who had given me everything. But 200 became 400 the next month, then 600. Before I knew it, I was covering their $1,800 mortgage payment every month, plus utilities, plus groceries. Dad would call with updates on potential jobs that never seemed to materialize, and Mom would send thank you cards with homemade cookies that reminded me of childhood Sunday afternoons. Then Derek entered the picture with his complications. My younger brother had always been the charming one, the smooth talker who could convince anyone of anything. When he married Laura in 2017, a real estate agent with expensive tastes and big dreams, I thought maybe he would finally settle down and get his life together. Instead, their wedding became another financial responsibility that somehow landed on my shoulders. "Just help with the catering costs, Madison," Derek had said 6 months before the wedding. "Laura's parents are covering the venue and we have most everything else handled." $3,000 later, I realized I had essentially paid for their entire reception while they took credit for throwing such a beautiful party. After the wedding, Derek's spending habits only got worse. Designer clothes he claimed he needed for job interviews, a brand new Ford pickup truck that cost more than my annual rent, expensive dinners at restaurants I could not afford to eat at regularly, even with my good salary. When the credit card bills started piling up and Derek came to me with that familiar, shameful expression, I should have seen the pattern forming. "It is just temporary, Madison," he promised, standing in my apartment doorway on a rainy Thursday evening. "Just until I get back on my feet. You know how much I appreciate everything you do for the family." The minimum payments started at $400 a month, but as Derek's debt grew, so did my obligation. Soon I was paying $600 monthly just to keep his credit cards from getting shut off. Laura's attitude toward me shifted during this time, though I was too blind to see it clearly. Where she had once been friendly and welcoming, treating me like a real brother-in-law, she became entitled and expectant. Phone conversations with Derek would happen within my earshot, and I started hearing phrases like, "Madison can handle it," and "your brother does not mind paying," more and more frequently. The warning signs were everywhere, but I explained them away. When Laura would mention expensive purchases right after I had just sent money to help Derek, I told myself it was coincidence. When Mom started looking at me expectantly every time a bill got mentioned in conversation, I convinced myself she was just grateful for my help. When Dad stopped talking about looking for work and started talking about early retirement, I figured he deserved rest after decades of hard labor. By the time Thanksgiving 2018 rolled around, I was excited about the family gathering. I had spent nearly 3 years being the family hero, the responsible son who stepped up when times got tough. I brought expensive wine that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week, plus premium ingredients for stuffing that I had picked up from the gourmet market downtown. Arriving early to help cook felt natural, like I was contributing to something bigger than myself. The initial atmosphere seemed perfect. Mom hugged me longer than usual when I walked in, and Dad actually turned away from the football pregame show to shake my hand and thank me for everything I had been doing. Derek and Laura were already there, and Laura even complimented the wine I had brought, though she opened it immediately and poured herself a generous glass. But then I overheard Laura on the phone in the kitchen while I was chopping vegetables for the stuffing. She was talking to someone about their vacation plans for Christmas, and she said with complete confidence, "Oh, Madison will cover it. He always does." The casual way she said it, like my money was already hers to spend, sent a chill down my spine that I tried hard to ignore. Dinner started normally enough with the kind of comfortable family conversation I had been craving. We talked about football, complained about the early winter weather, and gossiped about neighbors and their various dramas. For the first hour sitting around that familiar dining room table, everything felt like the old days when money was not constantly hanging in the air between us, like smoke from a kitchen fire. Then Dad mentioned the heating bill in passing, describing how much higher it had been than expected. And I watched him look directly at me with those hopeful eyes I had grown to recognize. Without even thinking, I heard myself offering to help, the same automatic response that had become second nature over the past 3 years. But this time, I caught Laura exchanging a look with Derek, a quick glance that seemed almost victorious, like they had been betting on whether I would take the bait. Mom brought up needing a new roof during the main course, explaining how the recent storms had revealed several leaks that could not wait until spring to fix. Again, that expectant look landed on me, and I realized with growing discomfort that our family gathering had become a fundraising event, with me as the sole target donor. Every conversation seemed designed to lead toward another financial need, another way I could prove my love and loyalty through my bank account. Laura started testing boundaries more aggressively as the evening progressed. "Madison, Derek really needs some new work clothes for his job interviews," she announced while cutting her turkey, speaking about my brother, like he was not sitting right there at the table. The problem was, I knew Derek had not been seriously job hunting. I had seen him playing video games at 2 in the afternoon on multiple weekdays when I had stopped by their apartment unannounced. The discomfort growing in my stomach was getting harder to ignore, but I did not want to cause a scene during what should have been a peaceful family holiday. I kept telling myself that I was being too sensitive, that families help each other, and I should be grateful to be in a position to provide that help. When Cousin Jenny arrived with her 3 kids, the atmosphere shifted back to something more normal for a while. I helped the children with their coloring books and felt that genuine family warmth I had been missing. These kids did not care about my bank balance or my ability to solve problems with money transfers. They just wanted someone to help them stay inside the lines while coloring cartoon turkeys and to listen to their excited chatter about school and friends. But even that peaceful moment got interrupted when I overheard Mom talking to Jenny in the kitchen. "Madison takes such good care of us," she was saying, and the tone was all wrong. It did not sound like gratitude or pride. It sounded transactional, like she was describing a service provider rather than her son. The words hit me differently than they should have, and I started questioning everything I thought I understood about our family dynamics. During dessert, Laura started talking about their vacation plans to Cancun, describing expensive resort packages and excursions that cost more than most people make in a month. I found myself wondering how they could afford international vacation travel when I was paying their basic living expenses and credit card minimums. The math did not add up unless they had simply decided that vacation money was separate from survival money, and survival money was Madison's responsibility. Derek mentioned wanting a new gaming system, some high-end setup that cost over $1,000, and the way he looked at me while describing it made my skin crawl. There was expectation in that look, assumption that I would make his wants into realities, just like I had been doing with everyone else's needs. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, even for someone who had been deliberately blind to it for 3 years. Laura kept bringing up Derek's credit card debt in casual conversation, not like it was a problem to be solved, but like it was an established fact that Madison would handle it. She talked about my financial support like it was a permanent arrangement rather than temporary help during a difficult time. Every reference to money felt calculated, designed to reinforce the idea that my role in this family was to be the walking wallet. "Madison loves helping family" became Laura's favorite phrase that evening, and she used it to justify every financial expectation and assumption. The more she said it, the more I realized that nobody had asked me whether I loved it or whether I wanted to continue. They had simply decided what my role would be and expected me to keep playing it indefinitely. Mom started agreeing with Laura more than defending me when the conversation took these turns. Instead of stepping in to say that I had already done enough or that Derek needed to handle his own responsibilities, she would nod along and add her own suggestions for ways I could help more. Dad seemed oblivious to the whole dynamic, staying focused on the football game playing in the background, but his lack of awareness was starting to feel like willful ignorance. The resentment building inside me was becoming hard to suppress, but I kept trying to convince myself that this was just how families worked. Maybe I was being selfish for wanting recognition that did not come in the form of new financial requests. Maybe love really did mean being willing to sacrifice indefinitely for the people you care about, even when that sacrifice was starting to feel like extortion. By the time we reached dessert, an expensive cake that I suddenly realized I had unknowingly funded through the grocery money I sent every month, Laura's confidence had grown into something that felt almost aggressive. She was leading conversations now, making pronouncements about our family dynamics, like she was the expert on how we all related to each other, despite only being part of the family for less than 2 years. The conversation turned to my job and my salary with Laura, asking detailed questions about my income and living expenses that felt invasive and inappropriate. She kept talking about how lucky I was to be able to afford helping family, like my success was some kind of lottery win rather than the result of years of education and hard work. When I pointed out that I worked 60-hour weeks and had earned my position through dedication and skill, she just smiled, that condescending smile I was starting to hate. "Well," Laura said, setting down her fork and looking directly at me with that smirk I will never forget, "your parents only love you when you are paying their bills anyway." The silence that fell over the table felt like a physical weight. I could hear the football game still playing in the background, could smell the lingering aroma of turkey and stuffing, could see the flickering candles Mom had lit to make the dinner feel special. But everything else stopped. My heart, my breathing, my ability to process what I had just heard. It felt like being slapped across the face by someone I had trusted. I waited for someone to defend me. I waited for Mom to gasp in horror at such a cruel statement. I waited for Dad to tell Laura that she had crossed a line and needed to apologize immediately. I waited for Derek to stand up for his brother and tell his wife that she had gone too far. Instead, Mom started laughing. Actually laughing like Laura had told the funniest joke she had heard all evening. "You are not welcome unless you clear your brother's credit card debt," she added, still chuckling like this was all just harmless family teasing instead of the most devastating thing anyone had ever said to me. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs and making the room spin around me. 3 years of believing that I was helping family who loved and appreciated me crumbled in that moment. 3 years of sacrifice, of delayed vacations and smaller apartments, and saying no to things I wanted so that I could say yes to things they needed. All of it was suddenly revealed as a transaction, a payment plan for love that was never real to begin with. Derek did not defend me. He just looked embarrassed and uncomfortable, but he stayed silent while his wife destroyed his brother's heart with words and his mother laughed at the destruction. Dad remained focused on the television, either because he had not heard what was happening or because he did not care enough to get involved. Laura was not finished. "Face it, Madison," she continued, emboldened by the positive reaction from Mom. "What else do you bring to this family?" She started listing everything I had paid for over the past 3 years. Like I owed them those payments, like they were debts I had volunteered to take on, rather than gifts I had given out of love. My mind started racing, calculating the thousands of dollars I had spent thinking about all the sacrifices I had made to accommodate their constant financial needs. I remembered the vacation to Colorado I had canceled because Derek needed help with car repairs. I remembered the new car I had delayed purchasing because Mom and Dad needed roof work. I remembered the smaller apartment I had chosen so that I could afford to keep supporting everyone else's lifestyle while limiting my own. Sitting there listening to Laura itemize my financial contributions like they were evidence against me, I realized that I had been funding Derek and Laura's comfortable lifestyle while constraining my own opportunities for happiness and growth. Derek's debt was not from necessities or emergencies. It was from luxury spending, from choices to live beyond their means while relying on me to cover the consequences. Mom was still nodding along with everything Laura said, adding her own comments about how generous I was and how much the family needed my help. But it did not sound like gratitude anymore. It sounded like ownership, like they had decided I belonged to them, and my money belonged to them, and my future belonged to whatever they decided they needed from me. The realization that my parents were not struggling as much as they had claimed hit me like another wave of betrayal. Dad's talk of early retirement, Mom's expensive taste in groceries, The way they had never seemed particularly stressed about money, even while asking me to cover their bills. They had been manipulating me systematically for 3 years, and I had been too trusting and too eager to help to see the truth. Laura kept talking, describing my role in the family like I was a resource to be managed, rather than a person to be loved. Besides, what else are little brothers for? She asked with that same cruel smirk. And that was when I realized she did not even know basic facts about me. I am older than Derek, not younger. To her, I was not Madison, the person with feelings and dreams and needs of my own. I was just the one who pays, and she had never bothered to learn anything else. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor in the sudden quiet. Everyone looked at me with expressions that ranged from surprise to annoyance, like I was interrupting something important rather than responding to my own humiliation. They expected me to sit back down and take more abuse to continue playing my assigned role as the family's personal bank account. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because something had clicked into place in my mind, some final piece of understanding that made everything clear for the first time in years. You are right, I said quietly, and I meant it. My calm response seemed to shock everyone more than if I had started yelling or stormed out of the house. You are absolutely right, Laura, I repeated, keeping my voice steady and measured. I have been thinking about our relationship lately, about what it really means and what it is really based on. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, ignoring the confused looks around the table. For the next few minutes, I calculated numbers that I had never added up before going through 3 years of transactions and transfers and payments that I had made on behalf of the people sitting in front of me. Mortgage payments, utility bills, grocery money, credit card minimums, car repairs, medical copays, Derek's wedding costs, vacation funding, emergency repairs. That turned out to be not so emergency after all. When I announced the total amount, the number that appeared on my phone screen, the silence in the room became something different. Over $30,000 in 3 years. $30,000 that I had given freely, believing it was temporary help during a difficult time, believing it was what family members do for each other when circumstances require it. Since this is a transactional relationship, I continued still speaking in that calm voice that seemed to be coming from someone else. Let me be clear about the new terms. I announced that I would be stopping all financial support immediately effective that very evening. No more automatic transfers for the mortgage. No more monthly grocery allowances. No more covering Derek's credit card payments or anyone else's convenient emergencies. Laura's smirk disappeared so quickly, it was almost funny. The panic that replaced it was immediate and obvious, like watching someone realize they had just killed the golden goose with their own greed. Mom tried to backtrack using that sweet voice she had always used when she wanted something from me as a child. Madison, honey, we did not mean it that way, she said, reaching across the table like she could physically pull back the words that had already done their damage. You know we love you for who you are, not for what you can give us. You laughed when she said it, Mom, I replied, and there was no anger in my voice, just exhaustion and disappointment. You agreed with her. You added your own comment about me not being welcome unless I cleared Derek's debt. Those were your words, not hers. Dad finally looked up from the football game, his face showing the first signs that he was beginning to understand what was happening and what it might mean for their comfortable arrangement. Derek spoke for the first time since the conversation had started, his voice carrying that wheedling tone he had used since childhood when he wanted to get out of trouble. Come on, Madison, do not be dramatic, he said. Like my response to 3 years of financial manipulation and emotional abuse was somehow an overreaction. We are family. Families help each other. I explained that this was not drama, that this was simply a business decision based on the information I had been given about our relationship. If their love for me was conditional on my ability to pay their bills, then my financial support would be conditional on their ability to treat me with respect and appreciation. Since that respect had apparently expired, so would the money. I outlined the new terms of our relationship clearly and calmly. No more financial support for anyone regardless of the emergency or circumstance. Limited contact with family members who saw me primarily as a funding source. I would attend family events as a guest when invited, but not as the person responsible for making those events financially possible. Laura tried to argue bringing up Derek's job situation and their various financial obligations, like those were my responsibilities to solve. I cut her off before she could build momentum, explaining that Derek was an adult who needed to handle adult responsibilities like an adult. Their financial problems were theirs to solve, just like my financial problems were mine to handle. Mom and Dad would need to downsize their lifestyle, or find other solutions for their money troubles, just like millions of other Americans do when their income does not match their expenses. Derek would need to get serious about finding work and paying his own bills, or face the consequences of the choices he had made. As I spoke, I felt an incredible lightness settling over me, like a weight I had been carrying for 3 years was finally being lifted from my shoulders. The family's true nature was completely clear now: transactional, manipulative, and ungrateful. They had never loved Madison the person. They had loved Madison the resource. I gathered my coat and keys, and then I picked up the expensive wine I had brought since I had paid for it. And apparently, ownership was the only thing that mattered to these people. Laura tried one desperate last appeal, talking about family loyalty, like it was something she understood. "Think about family loyalty," she said, and there was real desperation in her voice now. "I did think about it," I replied, pausing at the doorway of the dining room where I had shared so many meals and so many memories that now felt contaminated by the truth. "For 3 years. Where was your loyalty to me?" I walked out calmly while they started arguing among themselves, probably trying to figure out how they were going to handle their financial obligations without their personal ATM. Driving home that night, I felt free for the first time in years. The months that followed were a revelation. I redirected the money I had been sending to my family toward my own goals and dreams. I moved into a larger apartment in a neighborhood I actually wanted to live in. I started a vacation fund and booked a trip to Ireland that I had been postponing for years. I increased my retirement contributions and began investing in my own future instead of funding other people's present comfort. My parents called multiple times, begging and pleading and promising that things would be different if I would just help them through this one last crisis. I maintained my boundaries, explaining that their emergencies were not my emergencies and that they needed to find solutions that did not involve manipulating family members. Derek's credit cards got shut off within 6 weeks, and the real consequences of his lifestyle choices finally started hitting home. Laura and Derek separated when the financial stress became too much for their marriage to handle, and I felt no guilt about the role my boundaries had played in their breakup. Relationships built on someone else's money were never going to be sustainable. I discovered what real friendships looked like when they were not influenced by financial manipulation or family obligation. I joined a hiking group and made genuine connections with people who liked me for my personality and interests, not for my ability to solve their problems with money transfers. I started dating again, building relationships that were not constantly interrupted by family financial emergencies. Eventually, my parents apologized genuinely, admitting that they had taken advantage of my generosity and treated me unfairly, but I kept the financial boundaries in place, and our relationship slowly rebuilt on a foundation of respect rather than money. We learned to enjoy each other's company without the constant undercurrent of financial need and obligation. Derek eventually got a steady job and started handling his own responsibilities. Our relationship improved dramatically once money was no longer part of the equation. Family gatherings became smaller, but more genuine, focused on actually spending time together rather than fundraising for the next crisis. I kept my successful career, but now I enjoyed the fruits of my labor instead of giving them all away to people who did not appreciate the sacrifice. I built a substantial emergency fund and invested in my own security and happiness. I found peace in knowing that my worth was not measured by the size of my bank account or my willingness to solve other people's problems. The lesson I learned that Thanksgiving evening changed my entire approach to relationships and money. Real love does not require constant payment to maintain. Being financially responsible does not make you everyone else's personal ATM. Setting boundaries actually preserves relationships better than enabling bad behavior. Sometimes walking away teaches more than staying and suffering. Family should build you up, not bleed you dry for their own benefit. I learned the difference between being generous and being taken advantage of, between helping temporarily and being exploited permanently. True security comes from keeping your resources available for genuine emergencies, not manufactured crises designed to manipulate your emotions. Respect must be mutual in healthy relationships, or those relationships become exploitation disguised as love. That Thanksgiving dinner was the most painful and most valuable experience of my adult life. It taught me that my worth as a person exists completely separate from my bank balance, and that anyone who cannot see that worth is not worth my time or my money. Have you ever been in a situation where family members took advantage of your generosity? Let me know in the comments below how you handled it, and hit that like button. If this story helped you think differently about family finances, subscribe for more real-life stories about setting boundaries and protecting yourself from manipulation. And please share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who claim to love them. Thank you for watching, and remember that your worth is not determined by what you can give others, but by who you are as a person. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next story.